Maruti Suzuki's Wagon R. It's a hatchback that your dad would choose because it's just so sensible, isn't it? And well, we are driving the third generation of the Wagon R and it's planning to make a big step. And we're particularly excited because that big step involves a new platform which is borrowed from Maruti Suzuki's Ignis. So, we are hoping that the Wagon R can move away from being utilitarian, stick to being sensible, but also get a bit sophisticated and desirable so that the younger members of the family would also happily drive it. One of the big changes here on the Wagon R are the engine options. You still get that 3-cylinder 1-litre petrol engine on the Wagon R, but there's now for the first time also a 4-cylinder 1.2-litre petrol, which is borrowed from the Ignis. It gets 83 PS of power and well, while power makes it more punchy out on the highway, making this more versatile, so longer drives with the family won't feel tiresome in this Wagon R. But the real benefit is going to be the calmness that this offers. The cabin just feels that much more quieter, it feels that much more composed and makes it that much less tiresome if you're doing longer drives. And of course in the city we know this engine, this K12 engine is really peppy and easy to use. Now what makes the Wagon R more peppy is also the fact that it is lighter than before. When you compare the old 1-litre and the new 1-litre, this, despite being larger in every which way, is also lighter by about 65 kilograms. And when it comes to fuel efficiency, it has bumped it up to 22.5 kilometers per litre for the 1-litre petrol, and this 1.2-litre petrol delivers 21.5 kpl. And that's whether you choose manual or AMT. Yes, the AMT, well, as you would expect, is the same 5-speed gearbox as with the manual. It's just been automated. And if you're thinking AMT and head nod, how much do you feel it? Well, I'm going to put my foot down. Not much, really. Now in typical stop-go traffic, you'll find that the gearbox holds on to second and sticks with it, which means it's easy to go on and off the gas. You don't get too much drive every time you dab it, and it's just that every once in a while when you lift off, you're hoping that it stayed in gear, but it's actually shifted up and then it hunts a bit. But that doesn't happen too often. Now if you're out on the highway cruising, you could let the AMT gearbox do what it wants, as it is pretty quick to respond when you put your foot down like that. But if you want manual control, of course you can just toggle it that way and toggle down to shift up and toggle up to shift down, and again you can see it responds quickly. Now the Wagon R has gone big properly. It's got a longer wheelbase, it's wider at the front and at the back, and that means it's genuinely a bigger car and it feels that much more composed at highway speeds because of that, right? It also gets a more sophisticated suspension system, it's all near the rear, and that makes it more comfortable. When you're going over bumpy roads, you'll find that it goes over them quite noiselessly. It takes the edge off of most of them. You don't get tossed around like you used to before, but every now and then you do feel that little bit of a thunk when you go over a big pothole. And on the highway, yes, at higher speeds, go around a bend and you will feel it roll around corners. Also the steering, it isn't the most communicative. It's pretty much pat down the way we've seen on the Ignis and the Swift, which is really quite numb. The brakes on our test car had enough bite, but it just required a bit more effort than I expected to get them to really grab on. There's no doubt about it. The way the Wagon R feels like to drive in terms of maturity, it has taken a big step forward. Now when it comes to stepping up, the Wagon R is larger, which means it's also going to be bigger in terms of space. And when it comes to space, the first thing I'd like to talk about is boot space, because that added length has helped over here. The wheelbase has been stretched out. You get 170 millimeters extra of the length of the boot here. It's deep, so you've got lots of storage. The old Wagon R had storage space of 180 liters. This is 341 liters. And with all our luggage in place here right now, you can see we've still got lots of room left over. So for a family going out for the weekend, no issue. Airport trips? Yeah, I think that's possible in here too. And in case you want more, you've got 60-40 split seats, so you could fold one down or both of them to really open up the space, which will be over 700 liters. And keep in mind, right now no CNG option is on offer, but if you choose a Wagon R with CNG in the future, with this size of boot, even with the tank in place, you would be able to pack in at least a bit of luggage. And on the whole, the really interesting bit, the 341 liters of luggage space on the Wagon R, it's more than Maruti Suzuki's Vitara Brezza. And this tall boy sets the standard in other areas too. One of the Wagon R trademarks has of course been the ease of getting in and out, and you can see how wide the door opens. And when you step in, it's so easy, you don't have to crouch down and get in. And once you're inside, those large windows make this cabin feel so airy. And you know what? It would feel a lot more airy than before because it is bigger. The car being wider, like I told you earlier, has actually made it 120 millimeters wider here in terms of shoulder room. So sitting three abreast, Maruti claimed, would be that much better. We tried it out and we would say that for occasional city jaunts, having 3 adults in the back, that would be fine. On longer drives, you would prefer just 2 adults in the back. And that's not all. Apart from shoulder room, the knee room is also more by about 10 millimeters as compared to before. Headroom, I don't think any one of us had a complaint about that in the past. What's missing here? Well, some of us could say that, you know, aircon vents for the rear would have been nice. But you know, we haven't been able to test the air conditioning system here in Udaipur, where it's still pretty cool, and it depends how well that works on whether we really needed those vents or not. But for now, these seats, it's quite a spacious and comfortable one. I really do wish that Maruti had offered adjustable headrests here on the top end variant, because when I'm sitting up here right up, I'm not getting that much support for my head. I'll have to slide down a bit low to rest my head on it and catch a nap if I'm spending time in the back seat. Now when you step into the front, true Wagon R all over again. It's really nice and airy, great view of the road up ahead, very confidence inspiring actually, especially if you're sitting here in the driver's seat, it will make you feel at ease. But when it comes to practicality, there are a couple of misses. First one, the reason why I'm here in the passenger seat is because the center console is actually pushed away from the driver, so it makes his legs feel very spacious over there. But here for me, the center console is rubbing against my right knee, and that can get a bit annoying. And that aside, when it comes to storage, there used to be those beautiful pop-out cup holders here on the Wagon R's dash, which are gone. You only get this one storage bin down here in the middle, which is square in shape, so holding a proper cup, I think that's going to be a bit tricky in that. And then you get another storage bin here, which is near the USB port and the aux-in port, which is where you could keep your phone quite easily and leave it to charge while you're listening to music on the go. Before we go any further, safety. Well, the all-new platform of the Wagon R is using 40% high-strength steel, which makes it that much stiffer, that much stronger. And when it comes to safety features, ABS with EBD, driver airbag, seat belts with pretensioners, load limiters are offered as standard, as are rear parking sensors. It's the passenger airbag that's optional. It's available as standard only on the top-end ZXi variant. On all the other variants, it's an option. There is one strange bit. The reverse parking sensor graphic actually shows the Swift. And since there are just 2 sensors, we wouldn't trust that display blindly. Now when it comes to the design, it's easy to throw in words like sophisticated, feels more premium, but this, well, I can't really say any one distinct thing about this design except for the fact that it feels strong and sturdy. It actually does, this black bit, and when you press against the plastics. This is feeling more reassuring than I had expected. Even the door pads here. And when it comes to premiumness, yes, there are a few touches there, like the steering wheel, which is bought from the Ignis. I like this design. And of course, when it comes to features, you get this new instrument cluster, which is an analog speedo, and a digital MID, which has the rev counter, fuel gauge, and of course a trip meter. But the big step up is, of course, that touchscreen in the middle, which is a first, right? For the Wagon R, of course, you've seen it in cars which are a bit cheaper even, but this is now using the Smart Play Studio system, which is an app that you can load on your phone. You can get navigation through that, you can stream music through that, and of course, even use the phone as a remote control for the infotainment system. But honestly, this system hasn't been exactly as smooth as we expected. Connecting our phone to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay hasn't worked out as well as we would have liked. And when it comes to this top-end ZXi variant, this is for sure the highlight. And that's my point. Should Maruti have called this the ZXi? Should it just have been VXi Plus, like on the older Wagon R? Because I think for it to be called ZXi, it should have had a bit more. I'm not saying Wagon R customers want alloy wheels, but if this is the ZXi, then I end up expecting to see a bit more flash, like alloy wheels. For instance, the driver should have got seat height adjust and a reversing camera. And while the outgoing Wagon R Stingray had projector headlamps, this doesn't. And the shape, well, it seems a bit forced. And now let me be a millennial brat. Where are my LED DRLs? ZXi, right? And well, coming back to reason, you look at that grille. I like the design of that. It looks handsome. The design is way too safe, and we would say the Stingray looked way cooler. To add a splash of appeal, Maruti is offering accessory packs like this robust pack, which offers chrome and silver elements and body cladding to make it look tougher. And there are other packs like Playtime, which add a bit of funk, and a customizable Casa option too. But even as is, the Wagon R looks more substantial, and this has to do with its proportions. Its overall length is 45mm less than the Ignis. But let's put things in perspective. Now to size up the Wagon R, let's be clear. Overall length, it's increased by 60mm. The stretch between the wheels is up by 35mm, that's 24-35mm wheelbase, same as the Maruti Suzuki Ignis. And in terms of overall length, on paper you might think that this is lower, and it might be just a little bit lower, but the real difference is because the older Wagon R used to come with roof rails at one point. Now in terms of design, the Wagon R is looking a bit more playful, and Maruti has some accessories to make it look all the more playful. But what's available as standard, you can see that black band running down the C-pillar to the rear door. Doesn't that remind you of the Swift? Well, and moving on to the overall shape, I think, well, it would be hard to not call it boxy because it still has that, very straight up look about it, but it isn't slab-sided like it was before. You look at the waistline, it bulges out a bit, just flares out a little bit, and it just has slightly nicer lines on it. And the overall proportions help it sit better, and in fact, from certain angles, it looks almost like a mini MPV, doesn't it? Now it's time to sum up. And before we do that, let's keep in mind that the all-new Wagon R, despite the bigger size, the greater comfort, more sophistication, has kept the price tag pretty much unchanged. So our gripes regarding the feel-good factor might seem a bit whiny. But if we are talking about a family hatchback, we have certain views. Now this third generation Wagon R for sure is going to have the fathers queue up for it. But the younger members in the family might try to dissuade them because in terms of design, while it looks more substantial, it just doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't have that wow factor. And the same goes for the feature list. It needed to have a bit more of excitement on that front. But if you can look past that, what you get is a Wagon R that's taken that same formula and taken it one big step forward, be it in terms of the boot space, the passenger space, or that 1.2 litre engine, which just widens what you could do with the Wagon R and makes it that much more enjoyable while you travel along in it. So yes, the third generation Wagon R, it is more sensible than before. It adds in a layer of sophistication, but when it comes to desirability, it needs to work on that front.